On a bustling city street, a wealthy man in a tailored suit paused to kick a stray puppy, laughing as the little dog whimpered. 10 minutes later, his world would come crashing down, watched by hundreds, filmed by strangers, and judged by a force more powerful than money. No one, least of all him, could have foreseen what happened next. Vincent DeLuca had always believed he could get away with anything. Money was his armor, arrogance his shield. He was the sort of man who spoke only to be obeyed and listened only to the sound of his own voice. City tabloids called him a visionary, a ruthless developer who turned neighborhoods into gold mines. To his rivals, he was a shark. To his admirers, a self-made icon. But to anyone without power, Vincent was simply a bully. He made no secret of his disdain for weakness. Waiters trembled at his glare. Secretaries flinched at his barked commands. Vincent prided himself on never letting sentiment cloud his judgment. Compassion, he said, was for those who could afford to lose, and animals, to Vincent, they were less than nothing, nuisances, liabilities, living reminders of a softness he despised. He'd once boasted to friends that he'd never owned a pet, never needed the pathetic loyalty of a dumb animal. At corporate galas, he laughed off animal welfare campaigns, calling them sentimental distractions for bleeding hearts. On that cold Monday morning, Vincent strode out of a luxury cafe with his coffee in hand, his phone pressed to his ear. Deals were in motion, stocks rising, and his voice cut through the noise of the city like a knife. His driver waited at the curb, engine idling. Pedestrians parted to let him pass, a force of nature, untouchable. But then, just beyond the cafe's awning, he saw it. A small puppy, matted and shaking, nosing through a discarded sandwich wrapper. The dog was all ribs and bones, tail wagging hopefully at anyone who spared a glance. Vincent sneered. "Who lets these pests run loose?" he grumbled into his phone. The puppy, hearing his voice, wagged harder, taking a timid step closer. Without a thought, Vincent drew back his polished shoe and kicked the puppy aside. The dog yelped, tumbling into the gutter, its cries slicing through the morning bustle. Vincent laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that turned heads on the crowded sidewalk. A few people stared in shock. Most looked away, uncomfortable, unwilling to challenge a man like him. But not everyone turned a blind eye. A young woman in a red scarf froze, eyes wide with horror. An elderly man with a cane shouted, "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Two teenagers, already recording city life for their social feed, caught the whole thing on camera. Vincent shrugged off their anger, smirking. "It's just a dog," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "You people need thicker skin." He wiped a speck of dirt from his suit and strode on, certain that, as always, nothing would come of it. In his world, money erased mistakes and reputation outweighed conscience. But that morning, the city felt different. A current of outrage rippled through the bystanders. The puppy limped away, whimpering, as the young woman knelt to gather it into her arms. Vincent barely made it 10 steps before he sensed the shift, the way people looked at him, not with envy, but with disgust. The driver avoided his gaze. Someone snapped a photo. Whispers followed him like a shadow. He reached the curb, ready to forget the whole incident, but the universe had other plans. A police cruiser slowed at the intersection, its lights flickering. The officer inside had seen the commotion and rolled down his window. "Everything all right here?" he called, scanning the crowd. Before Vincent could answer, the young woman in the red scarf stepped forward, puppy cradled against her chest. "That man kicked this dog, for no reason." "I have it on video," others chimed in. "He hurt the dog. He laughed about it. You should see what I recorded." Vincent's heart thudded, a cold prickle of disbelief running down his spine. This wasn't how things worked. He was Vincent DeLuca. People feared him, not the other way around. But the officer's eyes were hard. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stay right here." The bystanders gathered, phones raised, recording every second. In minutes, the video would explode across the internet. Strangers who had never met Vincent would soon know his name for all the wrong reasons. For the first time in years, Vincent felt a flicker of fear, not for his safety, but for something he'd thought invulnerable, his power. As the officer stepped out of the cruiser and the crowd pressed closer, Vincent realized the world was watching. He looked down at the puppy, now safe in gentle arms, its eyes full of trust even after pain, and saw, for a fleeting instant, what true strength looked like. He never imagined how quickly everything he valued could be taken from him. The air felt heavier as Vincent stood beside the police cruiser, his pulse thudding in his ears. The officer, Officer Ramirez, was calm but unyielding, his eyes fixed on Vincent as he asked for his ID. Vincent handed over his platinum-edged business card instead, half expecting the gesture to end the conversation. It never had failed before, but this time, Ramirez didn't even glance at the name. "Your driver's license, sir, please." His voice left no room for negotiation. The crowd had swelled, people with shopping bags, commuters late for work, cyclists who'd stopped mid-ride, all stood in a loose semicircle, their faces hard and expectant. Most held their phones up, recording every movement, every word. Vincent's driver, Marcus, looked away, pretending to check a tire. The bystanders whispered, their eyes flicking between Vincent and the young woman in the red scarf who was gently rocking the injured puppy. The puppy shivered in her arms, his brown eyes huge with confusion and pain. The woman murmured softly, wrapping her scarf around the trembling body. She glanced up, her voice shaking with anger. "He just kicked him. For fun. Who does that?" A grey-haired man at her side nodded grimly. "It's all on video, and if the police don't do anything, we'll make sure the world knows." He turned his phone to show Officer Ramirez, the footage playing back the cruel moment in pixelated detail. Vincent's expensive shoe, the puppy's startled yelp, the cold laugh. For a moment, Vincent wanted to protest, to spin the narrative as he'd done so many times before. But the mood had shifted. No one cared about his status or his money now. They wanted accountability, not excuses. Officer Ramirez watched the clip in silence, his jaw tightened. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me. We'll take a statement at the station." Vincent's face burned. "This is a misunderstanding. I'll have my lawyers—" "You'll have your chance to explain," the officer cut in, motioning to the cruiser. As Vincent was gently but firmly led away, the woman called after him, "You can't hurt those who can't defend themselves and expect the world to look away anymore." The puppy whimpered, but nestled into her arms, breathing in the warmth of her kindness. News spreads in a heartbeat. By the time Vincent sat in the back of the cruiser, the video had gone viral. His name, once a symbol of strength and success, trended for all the wrong reasons. DeLuca cruelty, justice for the puppy. Even the city's most elite media outlets ran the story within the hour. Some headlines were measured. Billionaire accused of animal abuse. Others were merciless. DeLuca exposed, caught on camera kicking helpless puppy. Calls flooded his lawyer's office. His PR team texted frantic damage control plans. The board of his flagship company scheduled an emergency meeting. In the station, Vincent paced the small interview room, fury simmering beneath his skin. He fired off messages, demanding immediate release, threatening lawsuits. But the world outside had changed. There were petitions, online campaigns, crowds assembling outside his office tower. He was no longer the predator. He was prey, surrounded and cornered, and the feeling was both alien and terrifying. Meanwhile, at the city vet clinic, the puppy lay on a soft blanket, whimpering as the young woman stroked his ears. "You're safe now, little guy," she murmured. "No one's going to hurt you again." The vet, Dr. Chen, examined the dog gently, her brow furrowed. "He's bruised but no broken bones. He'll need rest, warmth, and someone who cares." The woman, her name was Emily, nodded. "I'll foster him until he finds a real home." The puppy licked her hand, trust already blooming where fear had been. Back at the station, the hours crawled. Vincent was eventually released, pending investigation. But as he stepped outside, the world felt colder. Protesters lined the street. Journalists shouted questions. "Mr. DeLuca, do you have anything to say to the public?" "To the dog you kicked." Vincent tried to keep his head high, but for the first time he saw how truly alone he was. His phone rang, his assistant. "Sir, the board wants you to step back until this is resolved. Investors are furious. Animal welfare groups are calling for a boycott." He barked an order, voice breaking. "Tell them I'll handle it." But the world was no longer listening. As night fell, Vincent watched the video of himself on the sidewalk, again and again. Each time, the laughter in his eyes seemed more foreign, more monstrous. For the first time, he wondered what kind of man he had truly become. He stared at his reflection, haunted by the image of the puppy's trusting gaze, and realized that losing control was only the beginning. Some losses, he would soon discover, are permanent. Vincent awoke to silence, a foreign, heavy silence, broken only by the harsh trill of his phone. For years, he'd lived in a fortress of noise, endless meetings, parties, the constant hum of admiration and ambition. Now, every ring was a crisis, every voice on the line, urgent or angry. His inbox was a minefield. Threats of lawsuits, angry letters from shareholders, news alerts with his face under shameful headlines. Animal rights activists had painted "Justice for the Puppy" on the marble steps of his downtown penthouse. A growing crowd camped outside, waving signs and chanting his name, not in praise, but in fury. His lawyer's voice was terse. "You're to have no public comment. The prosecution's building a case. Your properties are being picketed. And, Vincent, the board wants your resignation. Now." Vincent slammed the phone down, rage giving way to panic. He paced the room, pausing at the window. The city that had always seemed to bow at his feet now looked back with cold, unforgiving eyes. In the mirror, his reflection was haggard. Even his suits, $1,000 of Italian wool, felt like costumes, unable to hide the hollowness beneath. For the first time, he wondered if he'd ever truly belonged anywhere at all. Across the city, in a warm kitchen lit by morning sunlight, Emily spooned food into a small ceramic bowl. The puppy, bandaged and blinking, hobbled over and wagged his tail with uncertain joy. Emily smiled, her touch gentle. "You're a brave one, aren't you?" she said softly. "You're safe now, little buddy. No more pain, I promise." She set up a cot in the corner, placed toys and a blanket nearby, and watched as the puppy sniffed everything, curiosity overcoming fear. In the following days, she named him Lucky because, as she told her friends, no one else would have survived the streets or that man's cruelty and still be willing to trust again. Emily posted updates online, the photos of Lucky sleeping on her lap, licking peanut butter from her fingers, learning to fetch a rubber bone, touched thousands. Messages flooded in from people moved by his resilience. Strangers sent donations for his care. Schools invited Emily to talk about kindness and standing up for the voiceless. Lucky became a symbol, a little dog with a big heart, bringing out the best in a city that had long forgotten how to care. But not everyone was moved to kindness. As Vincent's world shrank, old secrets surfaced. Former assistants shared stories of mistreatment. Employees described years of intimidation and fear. A journalist uncovered evidence that Vincent had pressured city officials to clear shelters ahead of his development projects, resulting in hundreds of animals being euthanized. The tabloids went wild. What began as outrage over a single act became a reckoning, an accounting of every cruelty, every abuse of power. Vincent tried to fight back. He hired new PR experts, filmed an apology video, pledged money to animal shelters, but every gesture was met with cynicism. Too late. "You're only sorry you got caught?" Even the apology, carefully crafted, seemed empty against the backdrop of the puppy's trusting face. His old friends distanced themselves. Invitations stopped arriving. Even Marcus, his loyal driver, turned in his keys with a quiet, "I can't do this anymore, sir." Vincent was alone, truly alone. Meanwhile, Lucky thrived. Emily's apartment filled with flowers, cards, and care packages. On weekends, children from the neighborhood lined up to pet him, sharing cookies and laughter. For each one, Lucky's presence was proof that healing was possible, even after pain. Emily found her life changed too. She was invited to speak at City Hall, and with trembling hands, she shared her story. One act of cruelty was met by 1,000 acts of love. That's the world I want to live in. That's the world Lucky deserves. Her words echoed far beyond the council chambers, but for Vincent, the walls closed in. He received notice of a formal indictment for animal cruelty. His accounts were frozen pending investigation. The board of his company voted unanimously to remove him, stripping his name from the lobby and the company letterhead. Friends who once toasted his success now gossiped about his downfall. He wandered the empty halls of his penthouse, the city's lights winking through rain-streaked windows. In the darkness, his mind replayed the moment, his laughter, the puppy's yelp, the crowd's outrage. He tried to summon anger, but found only regret. One night, unable to sleep, Vincent sat in the shadows and watched a video Emily had posted. Lucky, eyes bright, chasing his tail as children cheered. He realized he had lost everything he thought mattered. But he wondered, was it possible to find, or in the rubble, something real at last? Outside, a storm gathered, both in the sky and in his battered soul. And somewhere across the city, a puppy he would never see again was learning, every day, how to love and trust anew. The rain fell for days, turning city streets to rivers and Vincent's penthouse to a silent mausoleum. He spent long hours pacing marble floors, watching as his world slipped away with every news cycle, every alert on his phone. The photos of him kicking the puppy were everywhere. Posters, online articles, even projected onto the walls of city buildings by activists at night. Once, he had commanded attention with a snap of his fingers. Now, he couldn't step outside without being jeered, filmed, or shamed. Delivery men averted their gaze. Old colleagues sent short and chilly emails. Please remove me from your contacts. He was called to court, where the judge denied him bail, citing the weight of public outrage and evidence of past abuse. He remembered his lawyer's blunt words. Vincent, you're not just fighting for your fortune anymore. You're fighting for your freedom. Sleep eluded him. He replayed every moment leading up to that morning. What had made him so cruel, so callous? He'd never paused to wonder before. Now, with nothing but echoes for company, he was forced to reckon with the person he'd become. Everywhere he looked, he saw the puppy's eyes, wide with pain, yet somehow impossibly still trusting. That look haunted him, eating away at his certainty, his old armor of arrogance. He scrolled through Emily's posts in secret. At first, he scoffed at the praise she received. She's exploiting that mutt, he told himself. But deep down, envy twisted inside him. The affection pouring toward the little dog was something he had never known, not even as a child. One night, he saw a video of Lucky licking a child's tears, and something inside Vincent cracked. He sat for hours in the dark, hands shaking, wondering if he'd ever be forgiven, not by the world, but by himself. Across town, the city transformed into a community united by kindness. Lucky's story was on every news channel. People left treats and toys on Emily's doorstep. Children drew pictures of Lucky as a superhero, cape and all, delivering puppy power to everyone in need. Emily was overwhelmed by the attention, but grateful for the chance to show what one act of compassion could do. She began volunteering at the shelter, helping more animals find homes. Her apartment became a gathering place for those who wanted to help, to learn, to heal. One morning, as she sipped coffee by the window, she received a call from the city council. Ms. Green, we'd like to invite you and Lucky to be grand marshals at the annual parade. We want to celebrate what Lucky represents: hope, forgiveness, and the courage to do what's right. Emily was stunned. The invitation made local headlines. From victim to hero, Lucky leads the way. Even a famous philanthropist reached out, offering to fund a new animal rescue center in Lucky's name, with Emily as the director. She wept tears of joy, hugging Lucky as the puppy wagged his tail, blissfully unaware of his fame. For Vincent, each of these victories felt like another stone added to his burden. He saw his former company donate to animal charities, the new CEO's statement trending. It's time to build a better legacy, one of compassion, not conquest. His own name was scrubbed from the buildings, replaced by the faces of those he'd hurt. He tried to call Emily to apologize, but she never answered. He drafted letters, torn between rage and regret, then shredded them all. One afternoon, an old friend finally visited, standing awkwardly in the echoing living room. You brought this on yourself, Vince, but you're not beyond hope. Own up. Make amends, not excuses. Vincent nodded, but the words tasted bitter. Did he even know how to begin? The day of the parade arrived. The city was awash in banners and music. Emily, dressed in bright yellow, walked at the head of the procession, holding Lucky's leash. Children ran beside them, waving flags and tossing confetti. The mayor gave a speech, calling Lucky a reminder that kindness can change even the hardest hearts. As Emily knelt to hug Lucky amid the cheers, Vincent watched the scene from his empty apartment, tears streaming down his face. In that moment, he understood. He had truly lost everything. But as the parade moved on, something new flickered within him. A question, a wish, a fragile hope. Could he ever do anything to make it right? The answer, he knew, would not be found in money or power. It would begin with humility, and with facing the truth, at last, in the open. The morning after the parade, Vincent awoke to an apartment even more silent than before. The echo of cheering crowds on TV was replaced by a ringing in his ears, a reminder of everything he'd lost. He spent hours sitting by the window, replaying scenes from the celebration, Emily waving, Lucky prancing, children laughing. Air City united for once, not in ambition but in simple joy. The guilt pressed on him, heavier than any shame he'd known. He tried again to reach out, an email to Emily, short and earnest. "I'm sorry, I want to help. Please, tell me what I can do." No reply. He wrote a check for the animal shelter, signing it with trembling hands, but the shelter's director called his lawyer back. "Thank you, but we can't accept it. This isn't about money, Mr. DeLuca. It's about trust." That night, Vincent wandered the city streets in disguise, hoping to disappear into the crowd. But even anonymous, he heard his name whispered in snippets. That's him, the one who kicked the dog. Disgraceful. Some faces glared, some pitied. He realized there was no shortcut to forgiveness. In desperation, he volunteered at a soup kitchen under a friend's name. He kept his head down, peeling potatoes, scrubbing pans. A stray cat skulked around the back alley. Every instinct told him to shoo it away, but instead, he crouched and offered a scrap of food. The cat accepted, eyes cautious, but not unkind. For the first time in weeks, Vincent felt a flicker of something like peace. Meanwhile, Emily's life was changing faster than she could comprehend. The philanthropist's offer became real. The city council voted to convert an old firehouse into the Lucky Center, a safe haven for abused and abandoned animals. Emily was named director, tasked with building a team and a vision. Her first act was to visit the shelter where she'd found Lucky and invite every volunteer to join her. "None of this would have happened without all of you," she told them. "We'll do it together." Lucky adapted to his new home as if he'd always belonged. He greeted visitors, played with rescued dogs, even calmed frightened children with his gentle nuzzles. His story drew more volunteers and donations than Emily had ever dreamed possible. Late at night, Emily sat at her desk, paperwork piling up, Lucky curled at her feet. Sometimes she felt overwhelmed, afraid she'd let everyone down. But every time she saw Lucky's wagging tail or the look of relief on a family adopting a new friend, she knew she was right where she belonged. Vincent's path was lonelier. One afternoon, while picking up trash in a city park for community service, he saw a group of boys teasing a small day skittish dog. Something snapped inside him, not anger, but recognition. He stepped in, firm but calm, and ushered the boys away. Then he knelt, speaking softly to the trembling dog. To his surprise, the animal approached, letting Vincent stroke its head. An elderly woman who'd watched the scene from a bench approached, recognition flickering in her eyes. "You're Vincent DeLuca, aren't you?" He braced for anger, but she only nodded, gentle but direct. "You made a terrible mistake, but that doesn't mean you can't do good now. Kindness isn't about erasing the past, it's about changing what comes next." The words lingered. The next week, Vincent wrote a public letter. No lawyers, no PR edits, just his own voice. He admitted his cruelty, detailed his failures, and apologized to Emily, the city, and, most of all, to Lucky. He posted it online, expecting mockery or indifference. Instead, comments trickled in, many angry, some forgiving, a few cautiously hopeful. Actions speak louder than words. "Show us who you are now." Vincent understood. True change would take more than a letter or a check. He began volunteering at the Lucky Center, cleaning kennels and hauling supplies in silence. Some recognized him, others ignored him, but Emily watched from a distance, wary but willing to let actions speak. One day, as Vincent worked, Lucky trotted up and sat beside him, tail wagging, eyes full of calm acceptance. Vincent reached out, tentative. Lucky licked his hand, then ran off to greet a child at the door. Emily approached, arms crossed. "Why are you really here?" Vincent met her gaze, unflinching. "Because I have to try. Not for me, for them." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "We all have to start somewhere." Outside, the city bustled, unaware of this small moment of grace. But inside the center, a broken man, a brave dog, and a woman who had chosen kindness over anger were beginning, slowly, painfully, to rewrite what was possible. And just beyond the glass, the sun broke through the clouds, hinting that even after the worst storm, forgiveness and hope can find their way in. It was the busiest day yet at the Lucky Center. An open house with families touring the new kennels, news crews filming stories of hope, and city officials praising the transformation of an old firehouse into a sanctuary. Emily managed the chaos with calm efficiency, greeting visitors, organizing adoptions, and always keeping one eye on Lucky, whose gentle energy set the tone for the room. Vincent was working in the background, hauling bags of dog food, cleaning cages, and mopping floors. He'd grown used to the wary glances, some curious, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. He answered questions politely, avoided cameras, and kept his focus on the animals. As the afternoon sun filtered through the high windows, the sound of laughter and barking mingled with music and the buzz of conversation. Then, without warning, a shrill alarm cut through the noise. For a split second, everyone froze. "Fire in the kitchen!" shouted a volunteer, panic in her voice. Smoke billowed from the back of the building. Parents scooped up their children. Dogs barked in confusion, some whining, others howling as fear swept the center. Emily rushed to the control panel, trying to locate the source of the fire. Lucky followed at her heels, barking urgently at the kennel doors, almost as if he knew where the danger was worst. Flames licked the edges of the kitchen doorway, blocking the main exit from the animal holding area. Vincent didn't hesitate. He dashed toward the chaos, pushing through a wave of terrified visitors. A little girl was crying, separated from her parents by the smoke. Without thinking, Vincent lifted her into his arms, shielding her face with his jacket. "Hold on, sweetheart. We're getting out of here," he soothed. He handed the girl to a staff member near the door, then ran back inside. Emily caught his arm, fear in her eyes. "Don't! The smoke is too thick. Wait for the fire department." But Vincent shook his head, voice raw. "There are dogs still in the back. Someone has to get them." He disappeared into the haze, heart pounding, lungs burning. He could hear barking, frantic, desperate, groping along the wall. He found 2 kennels near the fire, dogs cowering inside. With shaking hands, he released the latches, scooped one terrier into his arms, and called for the other to follow. Back near the door, Lucky barked and ran circles around the last kennel, an old hound too scared to move. Vincent crawled on his hands and knees, coughing, eyes streaming. "Come on, buddy," he pleaded. "You're almost safe." The hound whimpered, then crept forward, following Vincent's scent. With the last of his strength, Vincent staggered to his feet, leading both dogs toward the light. Outside, cheers erupted as Vincent emerged, soot-stained and gasping, clutching the terrier and guiding the hound with shaking hands. Paramedics rushed to his side. Emily helped steady him, her face white with worry and awe. The fire department arrived, quickly containing the blaze. No one was hurt. The damage, though real, was far less than it could have been. In the aftermath, the crowd gathered, watching as Vincent, once the city's villain, sat on the curb, coughing, a grateful dog licking his face. A reporter pushed forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. DeLuca, why risk your life for these animals? For people who have called for your punishment?" Vincent, voice hoarse, looked at the terrified hound beside him, then up at the camera. "Because I couldn't just stand by anymore. Because I wanted to do something right, even if it cost me. Maybe, especially if it cost me." Emily stepped beside him, Lucky pressed to her side. She spoke to the crowd, her voice trembling but clear. This center is about second chances, for animals, for people. Today, someone proved we all deserve one. The mayor approached, offering Vincent her hand. "Thank you," she said simply, "for choosing to be brave when it mattered." Around them, people began to clap, some out of gratitude, others out of surprise, a few still unsure but touched by what they'd witnessed. As dusk fell, Emily checked on every animal. Lucky curled up beside the rescued dogs, licking their wounds, refusing to leave until they calmed. That night, as the center was cleaned and repaired, Emily sat in her office with Vincent and Lucky. "You didn't have to go back in," she said softly. Vincent met her eyes. "Maybe I did, not for forgiveness, just because it was right." Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. Maybe that's where forgiveness starts. They sat in silence, the distance between them closing, not erased but changed, softened by courage and understanding. Yet outside, a TV van idled, headlights slicing the darkness. The world was watching, waiting to decide. Was this the beginning of real change, or just a fleeting moment? As Vincent looked out at the city, he knew that his greatest test and his deepest hope were still to come. By morning, word of the fire and the rescue had swept across the city. News clips replayed Vincent's desperate dash through the smoke, the trembling dogs in his arms, the gratitude on Emily's face. Social media exploded with debate. Some still clung to their anger. A single good deed doesn't erase the past, but others, moved by what they'd seen, began to reconsider. Everyone deserves a second chance, even him. The Lucky Center was a hive of recovery. Volunteers arrived early to help scrub soot from the walls and clear debris. Families who had adopted pets from the center returned, bringing coffee, blankets, and fresh hope. The animals, nervous but safe, clung to Lucky's calm energy, finding comfort in his presence. Emily was everywhere at once, directing repairs, reassuring staff, updating the board. But in the quiet moments, she found herself watching Vincent, the way he worked side by side with the newest volunteers, the gentle way he spoke to frightened dogs, the humility in his silence. She'd seen his worst. Now, for the first time, she saw something else, something real. That afternoon, as the last of the smoke stains were washed from the main hallway, Emily found Vincent sitting alone in the courtyard, Lucky curled at his feet. He absently scratched behind the dog's ears, lost in thought. She sat beside him, letting the silence settle between them. "You could have walked away yesterday," Emily said quietly. "No one would have blamed you. Most people still wouldn't trust you with a goldfish, let alone a life." Vincent smiled weakly. "Walking away is all I've ever done, but not anymore. I needed to prove to myself, not the world, that I could be more than my worst moment." Emily nodded, watching Lucky doze contentedly in the sunlight. "You've done more than most would dare." A long pause stretched out. Vincent risked a glance at her. "Do you believe people can really change?" Emily turned the question over in her mind. Change isn't a moment. It's a choice you make, over and over. Sometimes it takes a crisis to even try. Sometimes it takes forgiveness from others and from yourself. He looked down, eyes shining. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to keep doing what's right." Lucky raised his head, sensing the tension, and nudged Vincent's hand. Emily smiled, a lump in her throat. "He forgave you long before I could. Maybe I'll get there too." For a while they watched the comings and goings at the center, children running in to see Lucky, old friends hugging, new families forming. The mayor arrived, shaking Vincent's hand in public, declaring the Lucky Center a beacon for all who believe in redemption. Vincent's story hit the airwaves again, but this time the headlines were different. From villain to volunteer, can DeLuca find redemption? Some still doubted. Some offered cautious support, but everywhere people were talking. Not about cruelty, but about change. Emily's phone buzzed with an invitation. The governor wanted to meet her and Lucky and honor the center's work with a civic award. She glanced at Vincent, then at Lucky, wondering aloud, could you ever have imagined all this, from a single act of kindness and a single act of cruelty? Look where we are. Vincent shook his head, humbled. It started with Lucky. But it was you who taught the city to care. She reached over, squeezing his hand. No one does it alone, not even heroes or villains, especially not those who've been both. For the first time since the incident, Vincent laughed. I'm not sure what I am, but I know who I want to be. The moment was soft, vulnerable. Two people sitting with their scars, letting hope in. Lucky yawned, then curled up closer, content in the new peace. But as dusk fell and the center's lights flickered on, Emily received a call from the shelter's night watchman. You should get down here. There's someone outside, the press, maybe, or someone else. They're asking for Vincent, and they don't sound happy. Emily's heart tightened. She looked at Vincent, worry and resolve mingling in her voice. It's not over yet. Whatever comes next, we face it together. For Lucky. For every animal who needs a chance. Vincent nodded, standing tall for the first time in weeks. As they headed out, Lucky trotted between them, tail high, spirit unbroken, the living proof that change, no matter how unlikely, could be real. That night, the storm returned, not in the sky but at the gates of the Lucky Center. A mob of reporters, protesters, and a handful of former associates gathered, flashbulbs popping, voices rising in accusation. Social media, once full of cautious hope, flared with new rumors. DeLuca's redemption is a PR stunt. Is the Lucky Center just a cover-up? Others dredged up every mistake from Vincent's past, spinning the day's heroism into a calculated act. Emily and Vincent arrived to find the staff tense, doors locked, Lucky barking anxiously from the main office. The center's sign had been splattered with red paint, no forgiveness for abusers, and flyers accusing Vincent of fresh wrongdoing littered the lawn. The old Vincent would have stormed outside, called lawyers, or shouted for police. But now, he simply stood by Emily, hands open, letting the anger wash over him. Emily faced the crowd with quiet resolve. We have nothing to hide. Anyone who wants to see our work is welcome. We believe in second chances, for animals and for people. A reporter thrust a microphone in Vincent's face. You think one rescue makes up for everything you've done? Are you just using these animals for your image? Vincent didn't flinch. No, I'm here to work, not to be forgiven. That's up to others. But every animal here, every volunteer, they're proof that change is possible if we're brave enough to try. A woman in the crowd shouted, "What about the animals you hurt before? How do you make it right?" Vincent's voice broke. I can't undo what's been done. I can only care for the ones in front of me now and fight for better laws, better shelters, better futures. I'm sorry, and I'm willing to work every day to prove it. A silence settled, heavy and uncertain. Some jeered, but others wavered, caught off guard by his humility. Suddenly, a group of young people, Emily's old volunteers and some of the children who'd been at the center's open day, arrived with posters of their own. Everyone deserves a chance. Love saves Lucky and us. Change is real. They formed a line in front of the doors, arms linked, shielding the entrance with their bodies. The contrast was stark. Anger and hope, distrust and belief, face to face under the center's battered sign. Emily stepped forward, voice strong. This place isn't about one person's past. It's about what we choose today. Lucky forgave, and that forgiveness changed us all. If you want to help, come inside. If not, please let us work in peace. Some protesters backed away, others stayed, still shouting. But for the first time, Emily saw the mood shift, hesitation, uncertainty, the first cracks in the wall of outrage. Lucky barked again, then slipped out to nuzzle the hands of a crying teenager at the front of the crowd. The girl knelt, hugging him, tears streaming down her cheeks. He's not afraid, she said. Maybe we shouldn't be, either. A local news anchor, there to capture scandal, found herself telling a different story. Her live broadcast, watched by thousands, showed Lucky comforting protesters, volunteers cleaning paint from the sign, Vincent mopping the floor alongside them. Inside the center, staff and families gathered in the meeting room, waiting for Emily to speak. She stood with Vincent and Lucky at her side, her voice trembling only a little. We can't control what people think. We can only keep showing up, caring, and hoping that kindness will speak for itself. No matter what happens, the lucky center belongs to all of us. A ripple of applause, small but real, swept the room. Vincent met Emily's eyes, thankful, amazed, vulnerable. Later that night, as the center quieted and the last protesters faded into the darkness, Emily found Vincent on the front steps, Lucky at his feet. "Did you ever think forgiveness would look like this?" Vincent asked quietly. Emily smiled. "Forgiveness is messy, but it's worth fighting for." He nodded, looking up at the stars. "I want to keep fighting. For them. For me. For all the Luckies out there." In the soft glow of the porch light, the old wounds didn't disappear, but for the first time, they felt like scars that could heal. Yet, as the city slept, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from the city council. "There's a motion to investigate the Lucky Center's funding. Be prepared for questions." Tomorrow morning, a new test was coming. But for now, Emily, Vincent, and Lucky rested together, united not by perfection, but by the courage to begin again. The morning brought grey clouds and an air of apprehension. City officials arrived at the Lucky Center just after dawn. 3 stern-faced inspectors, a councilwoman known for her hard line on public accountability, and a clerk wielding a thick folder of forms. They moved through the entrance with authority, cameras trailing, determined to scrutinize every corner. Emily met them at the door, clipboard in hand, voice calm but firm. "You're welcome to see everything. Our books are open and every animal's record is up to date." Vincent stood by, sweeping the walkway, trying to project calm. Inside, the staff moved quietly, straightening up, comforting nervous animals. Lucky, sensing the tension, stationed himself at the lobby, greeting each inspector with a wagging tail and soulful eyes. The inspection was relentless. The officials checked vaccination records, safety certifications, finances, and adoption protocols. They interviewed volunteers, pored over receipts, questioned every expense, even Emily's modest salary. One asked pointedly, "Have any donations been made by Mr. DeLuca, and if so, what assurances do we have that his involvement isn't a cover for past abuses?" Emily answered honestly. "Mr. DeLuca volunteers here. He is not an owner or financial stakeholder. The community runs this center. Its future belongs to all of us." Rumors swirled outside. Protesters returned, brandishing signs about corruption and demanding the center's closure. But a rival crowd gathered too. Former adopters, children with handmade posters, local business owners who'd donated supplies. "Save Lucky's home," they chanted. "This is our family." Inside, the councilwoman questioned Vincent directly. "Why should the city trust you? Why should we trust any of this after what you did?" Vincent took a breath, steady but raw. "I can't change my past. I come here every day because it's the only way I know to make up for it. I don't want trust, I want to be useful, and I want the animals and people here to have the safety I once took for granted." She wrote something in her notepad, eyes unreadable. For hours, the center's fate hung in limbo. Staff huddled in corners, volunteers wrung their hands, and Emily fielded phone calls from the press, the board, and the city shelter, all waiting for news. As tension reached its peak, the inspectors called everyone together in the main hall. The councilwoman spoke, voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We've reviewed your records. We found no evidence of fraud or misuse. The Lucky Center is in full compliance with city regulations. However, public opinion remains divided. We urge you to strengthen your oversight and welcome continued transparency. Your future depends not just on paperwork, but on community trust." A sigh of relief swept the room. Volunteers hugged, some weeping openly. Emily closed her eyes, letting the weight of fear finally slip away. But the councilwoman wasn't finished. She stepped forward, softer now. "You have a rare thing here. Don't let anger or pride destroy it. Let your actions speak louder than any scandal." Vincent nodded, humbled. "Thank you. I promise we will." Lucky barked, as if sealing the pledge. The crowd outside heard the news and erupted into cheers. Children ran in, hugging Emily, Vincent, and Lucky. Reporters scrambled for quotes, but the real story was clear on every face. Hope had won, at least for today. That evening, as the center settled, Emily gathered everyone in the main hall. We survived because we stood together. This place was built on second chances. For animals, for people, for our whole community. Let's make sure it always stays that way. Applause echoed off the walls, honest and full. Vincent found himself blinking back tears. For the first time, he felt not like an intruder or a criminal, but like a member of something bigger, a family forged in struggle, forgiveness, and hope. Afterward, as Emily locked up, she found Vincent sitting with Lucky by the front gate. "You didn't have to stay through all of this," she said. Vincent shook his head. "I did because I finally care what happens, not just to me, but to everyone here." Emily smiled, kneeling to scratch Lucky behind the ears. "Then you're home." Vincent's heart lifted, a small, fragile joy. But as they watched the sun set over the city, a final challenge waited: how to turn a single victory into a lasting legacy. For the first time, it felt possible. Word of the Lucky Center's survival spread quickly, first on social media, then through news outlets, then as a current of hope running through the city itself. But relief was only the beginning. People wanted more than a victory. They wanted a sign that trust and community could rebuild what was broken. It was the mayor who proposed it, standing in the shelter's sunlit lobby with Emily, Vincent, and Lucky at her side. "Let's open our doors, really open them. Let the city see what you've built, not just read about it. A festival of adoption, a celebration of second chances. And you, Mr. DeLuca," she added, eyes kind but firm, "will greet every family at the door." Emily felt a twist of nerves. Could they really do it? Vincent, caught off guard, nodded slowly. "I'll do whatever it takes." The weeks leading up to the event were a blur. Volunteers hung banners and planted flowers, local businesses donated treats and supplies, children painted paw prints on the sidewalk leading to the doors. Emily coordinated adoption interviews and training workshops. Vincent scrubbed every kennel, mended fences, and worked late into the night, learning each animal's name and story. But tension lurked beneath the surface. Not everyone was ready to forgive. Anonymous notes appeared. "Some stains don't wash out." Old protesters threatened to show up, cameras in hand, waiting for a misstep. Emily felt the pressure most acutely the night before the festival. She found Vincent in the yard, brushing Lucky in the fading light. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, uncertainty in her voice. Vincent glanced at her, his expression a mix of fear and resolve. "No, but I want to try. I want people to see who I am now, even if some never will." She squeezed his arm. "That's enough for today." Festival day dawned bright and breezy. Crowds gathered early, families, students, city officials, activists, and skeptics alike. Balloons bobbed above the gate. Music drifted from a local band. At the entrance, Vincent stood beside Emily and Lucky, greeting every visitor with a quiet smile, accepting handshakes and sometimes the hesitant forgiveness of those he'd wronged. Inside, the kennels bustled with excitement. Children played with puppies and kittens. Volunteers gave guided tours, and every animal wore a colorful scarf or bow. Lucky pranced through it all, accepting hugs, bringing shy adopters out of their shells. Emily felt her heart swell with pride and anxiety. Every time a reporter approached, she answered questions honestly. This center belongs to everyone. No one's perfect, but every act of care moves us closer to who we want to be. Vincent spent the day helping families meet their new companions, telling each animal's story, explaining how trust and patience could heal even the deepest wounds. Some guests still looked at him with skepticism, others with grudging respect. A few each, after hearing about the fire and his rescue, offered tentative words of encouragement. "Thank you for saving those dogs," one older woman said, pressing his hand. It mattered. Children ran up, eager to see Lucky, whose fame had outgrown even the parade. They begged for photos, asking if their new pets would be as brave. Vincent knelt beside them, honest for once. Maybe even braver. Every animal here has survived something hard, just like people. Outside, a group of protesters hovered, unsure whether to disrupt the celebration or witness the possibility of change. Some joined the crowd, curiosity overcoming anger. Others stayed at the edge, arms folded, watching for hypocrisy but finding only sincerity. As the afternoon sun warmed the courtyard, the mayor addressed the crowd. Today isn't just about adoptions, though that's a gift in itself. It's about faith. In animals, in each other, in the idea that no one's worst moment should define their life. Let this center stand as proof that we can choose to trust again. The applause was real, if still a little hesitant. By day's end, a record number of adoptions were finalized. Smiles outnumbered scowls. Even the toughest skeptics found themselves petting a dog or laughing at Lucky's antics. As the sun set, Emily and Vincent sat together by the entrance, Lucky asleep at their feet. Emily exhaled, her voice soft. "You did it. We did it." Vincent nodded, eyes wet. "Maybe it's just a beginning, but it feels like hope." Yet, as they packed up, a city official approached with an envelope. "There's to be a vote at the council next week. Some still want the center closed. You'll have one last chance to defend what you've built." Emily met Vincent's gaze, fear and determination flickering in both. "One last time," she said. Vincent reached down, hand on Lucky's head. For him, for all of us. Night fell, but the city hummed with something new, not suspicion, but the fragile, fierce possibility of change. The council chamber was packed. Journalists lined the back walls, cameras live streaming to thousands. Protesters and supporters alike crowded the seats, clutching homemade signs, some demanding closure, others proclaiming, "Every life deserves a chance." Emily stood at the front, heart pounding, Vincent at her side, Lucky quietly lying between them, head on his paws. The mayor called the meeting to order, her gavel ringing out above the murmur. "Today, we consider the future of the Lucky Center. Is it a symbol of hope, or a mistake the city can't afford to repeat?" The councilwoman who had led the investigation spoke first, her voice sharp. "This center's story has divided our city. There are those who believe in change, and those who doubt it can never be real. The past cannot be ignored, but neither can the good done since. Today, we will hear from all sides." Emily was called to speak. She steadied her voice, scanning the crowd. Lucky was hurt, but he never stopped trusting. That trust built a home not just for him, but for dozens of animals and people. No one here claims to be perfect, least of all me. We only promise to keep trying, to keep believing that every life matters, no matter what came before. She shared stories of children who had learned empathy, families who had adopted, elderly volunteers who'd found new purpose. "If you close this center," she finished, "you don't just shut a door on animals. You close it on all of us who needed a chance to heal." A hush followed. Then the councilwoman called Vincent. He stood, exposed before the city's judgment, the memory of his worst moment flickering in every glance. For a heartbeat, he considered running, but Lucky looked up at him, and he found the strength to speak. "I was once everything you say. Proud, cruel, certain I was untouchable. I hurt an innocent soul and paid for it with everything I had. But pain wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The people here gave me a chance to change, not with words, but with work. If you keep this place open, you prove that redemption isn't just a story, it's a reality anyone can reach for, every day." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. The mayor invited others to speak. A child who'd adopted a shy cat and found confidence. A nurse who'd adopted an older dog and said, "She saved me from loneliness." Even the city's fire chief stood, voice rough. "I saw what happened in that fire. I saw a man risk his life for others. That counts." The testimonies piled up, some simple, some deeply moving. Then, unexpectedly, the elderly woman Vincent had met in the park rose to her feet. "I lost my dog years ago. I never forgave the world for it, but this center made me believe again. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest about its scars. Please, let it stand." The final word came from the mayor. She looked at Emily, Vincent, then out over the crowd. "Second chances require risk. They require faith. I cannot erase what's been done, but I can choose to believe in what comes next." The council retired to vote. The minutes felt endless. Emily gripped Vincent's hand, Lucky pressing close. The room was silent, but for the anxious shifting of feet and the distant sound of traffic outside. At last, the mayor returned, holding a single envelope. Her eyes glistened as she opened it. By a vote of 6-1, the council elects to keep the Lucky Center open, under community oversight, with Vincent DeLuca's continued service as a condition of transparency and education. The center's mission, Second Chances in For All, will continue. A wave of cheers and tears swept the chamber. Emily embraced Vincent, and Lucky leapt up, barking joyfully. Supporters flooded the aisles. Even some former skeptics clapped, moved by the sheer force of hope in the room. Vincent wept, overcome. For the first time, he wasn't running from his past, but building something better from its ruins. As the crowd spilled into the streets, the city itself seemed lighter, like a burden had been shared and forgiven. But as the evening sky grew golden, Emily whispered, "This isn't the end, you know. The real work starts tomorrow." Vincent nodded, his heart full. "As long as we do it together, I'm ready." And Lucky, between them, was living proof. The world could break you, but it could also make you whole again. The news spread like wildfire. The Lucky Center would stay open. That night, the city's skyline shimmered brighter, as if the very lights were celebrating a victory not just for animals, but for everyone who had ever stumbled and found the courage to stand again. The center's gates remained open late. Families returned, bringing thank you notes, flowers, and treats for the animals. Reporters asked for quotes, but this time, the story was bigger than a headline. It was hope made real, one paw at a time. Emily moved through the bustling rooms, a mix of exhaustion and joy softening every step. She paused by the main office, where Lucky sat with his nose pressed to the window, tail thumping at every sound. She scratched his head, whispering, "You did it, boy. You made us all believe." In the courtyard, a small stage had been set for an impromptu celebration. The mayor took the microphone, her voice trembling with emotion. "Tonight, we honor not just a place, but a promise, that no life is too broken to mend, no mistake too great to redeem, and no second chance ever wasted." She called Vincent to the front. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure he deserved the applause that greeted him. He looked at Emily, who nodded encouragement, and at Lucky, whose trust never wavered. Vincent spoke, his voice steady but full of feeling. "I hurt someone who couldn't defend himself. I lost everything, and for a long time I thought I didn't deserve anything back. But this place, these people, showed me that the only way forward is through honesty, service, and love. I'll spend the rest of my life proving worthy of the chance you gave me." The crowd listened, some with tears, some with cautious smiles. Then, as if on cue, Lucky trotted onto the stage, pressing his head to Vincent's knee. The gesture said everything words could not. A hush fell. Emily joined them, and together they invited the children and volunteers onto the stage. One by one, people shared their own second chances. A teacher who'd survived illness, a mother who'd lost her home, a veteran with scars invisible to most. Each found their voice, each offered a piece of hope. Suddenly, an elderly woman in the crowd raised her hand. "Mr. DeLuca," she called, "what will you do now?" Vincent met her gaze, honest and vulnerable. "I'll be here. Every day. Cleaning cages, walking dogs, teaching kids what I've learned. I can't erase the past, but I can shape the future with every choice I make." The applause was thunderous, no longer reluctant, but full-hearted. Then, quietly, Vincent knelt beside Lucky, slipping off his expensive watch and placing it in the center's donation jar. The gesture was simple but spoke volumes. The old Vincent was gone. In his place stood a man whose wealth was now measured in service and humility. As the celebration continued, the mayor invited all to join in a candle-lit walk. Lanterns passed from hand to hand, illuminating the night as hundreds streamed through the neighborhood. At the head of the line walked Emily, Vincent, and Lucky, together, a living testament that forgiveness was possible, and that healing could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what any of them could see. Later, As the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, Emily and Vincent stood in the quiet yard, Lucky curled at their feet. "It's strange," Emily murmured, "how one moment of cruelty can break so much, but one act of courage can build it back stronger." Vincent smiled, tears shining in his eyes. "I never thought I'd feel whole again, but here, like this, I do." She squeezed his hand, the gesture both a promise and a challenge. "The work isn't finished. It never will be." He nodded, grateful. "I know. But for the first time, I'm glad." Inside, Lucky stirred, then padded over, resting his head in Vincent's lap. Vincent stroked his fur, overwhelmed by the gift of trust, a gift he knew he would never take for granted again. Above them, lanterns floated into the sky, carrying wishes for every stray, every broken soul, every person waiting for another chance. And for the first time, hope felt endless. In the days and weeks that followed, the Lucky Center became more than a shelter. It became the beating heart of a city learning to believe again. The story of Lucky, the battered puppy turned symbol of hope, echoed in classrooms, cafes, and council halls. Children drew his picture on school walls. Elderly men stopped to pet him on their walks. Letters poured in from distant towns, each one sharing a story of loss, redemption, or a simple wish for a second chance. Emily found herself busier than ever, balancing paperwork, community outreach, and the day-to-day rhythms of animal care. But now, every long day ended with laughter echoing through the halls, dogs chasing sunbeams across the floor, and new friendships blossoming over shared bowls of coffee and kibble. She watched Lucky thrive. His limp faded, his eyes shone with mischief, and he wore his small, ragged scar with pride. He was more than a mascot. He was the silent ambassador of forgiveness, meeting every visitor, skeptical or hopeful, with the same wagging tail. Even the old protesters softened, some volunteering for a shift, others simply pausing at the door to watch the miracle unfold. Vincent, true to his word, showed up early every morning. He cleaned cages, stacked supplies, led tours for school children, and, most importantly, listened. He listened to the stories of volunteers, the memories of elderly adopters, the laughter and tears of children. He made mistakes, but never the same one twice. Each day, he learned the delicate, patient work of trust, that it is not given, but earned, and never final. He became a mentor for teenagers doing community service, sharing his story not as a warning, but as an invitation. If you mess up, don't run, stay, work. Make it right. The city, watching, slowly began to believe in him, not as a billionaire, not as a villain, but as a neighbor willing to work for grace. Emily and Vincent's friendship deepened into something quieter and more resilient than romance, a partnership built on shared struggle, vulnerability, and a stubborn, gentle kind of hope. They hosted town hall meetings in the center, inviting even their fiercest critics to speak. Sometimes voices were raised, sometimes tears were shed, but every meeting ended with Lucky curled between them, a living bridge across every divide. Seasons turned. The first spring wildflowers bloomed along the center's fence. New animals arrived, some broken, all welcome. Each one was met with the same promise: you are safe here, you are wanted, you are enough. One night, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Emily found Vincent and Lucky sitting by the garden, watching fireflies blink between the trees. "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" she asked quietly. Vincent shook his head. "I wish I'd learned sooner, but if I hadn't fallen, I'd never have known what it meant to truly rise. I'd never have met Lucky. Or you." Emily smiled, tears sparkling in her eyes. "None of us are the same as before. We're better, because we chose to be." In that golden hush, with Lucky dozing between them and the world finally at peace, they understood. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about building something new together, stronger for the scars, brighter for the darkness endured. And so the Lucky Center thrived, living proof that healing is possible, that even the deepest wounds can become the roots of a better tomorrow. Children grew up, animals grew old and found love, and every adoption day was a small festival of hope. Vincent became, at last, a part of something greater than himself. Emily led the center with grace and courage, never forgetting the day a frightened puppy brought a city to its knees and then taught it how to stand again. As for Lucky, he lived his days surrounded by friends, his heart open to every newcomer, his legacy not in fame, but in the quiet revolution of kindness. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel and join our family of animal lovers. Here, every tale is a tribute to second chances and the everyday miracles of kindness. Do you believe in redemption? Have you witnessed an act of courage or compassion that changed a life? Tell us your story in the comments, and don't forget to watch our next video. Another journey of hope you won't want to miss. Remember, sometimes the greatest change starts with one small act. Thank you for watching, and for believing that no one, human or animal, is ever truly beyond hope.